It is 11:30. You know what that means. Time for Detroit's only nightly political talk show. Welcome to The Pulse. I'm Roop Raj. You know the big story of the day. It's Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan announcing a run for governor. And we have you covered from all angles. We're also diving into the incoming Trump administration. More names are added to the list, but you know what? There's actually another person whose nomination is in jeopardy tonight. We'll tell you which one and why. Plus, watch what you click, or in this case, on your phone, tap. Chinese hackers allegedly targeted President-elect Trump, VP-elect Vance, and members of the Harris campaign. And now they may be going after us. What we all need to know to watch out for and to keep our eyes on to make sure that our information remains safe. We'll have that coming up in just a moment. But we begin tonight with the news that's been speculation for a little while now, but now it's official. Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan announcing he will run for our state's top office in 2026. His bid for governor officially kicking off just weeks after he announced he won't run for mayor again that same year. But if you think he's running as a Democrat, you're wrong. He's running as an independent, and he explained why in this video he posted today.
I'm not running to be the Democrats' governor or the Republicans' governor. I'm running to be your governor. So if you and your neighbors are tired of the politics of conflict and want to have a serious conversation about real change, please invite me to your community. It's a big state, and it'll take me time to get everywhere. But I'll work really hard to get to know you and your problems and give you a chance to get to know me.
It's been a few years since we've heard that voice with campaign music behind it. You're hearing it, you're going to hear it for a long time. Something that's worth mentioning, though, Duggan running as an independent would basically mean he avoids a primary, which could include two Metro Detroiters already serving in Lansing. Now, we should be clear, neither Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson or Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist, be clear about this, they have not announced that they're seeking the governor's office, but their names are being floated as potentials to jump in the race. And I'll tell you what, something that's not a rumor, Mayor Duggan will be here on The Pulse for a one-on-one talking to me about his decision to enter the race. You'll remember the mayor was on this big round desk here on The Pulse just a little while ago when he announced he wouldn't seek another term as mayor, and he's living up to the promise to come back and talk about what's next. You'll want to watch for that tomorrow after Lions football. You'll already have it locked on Fox 2 anyways. Hopefully after another Lions win here on Fox 2. So now that we have that, we wanted to ask you, do you think Mayor Mike Duggan would be a good governor if he gets the nod 2 years from now? We hit the streets to get a pulse check. Here's what some of you told us.
Would he make a good governor? I'm not sure. But I am interested in seeing what he would do.
Oh, he'll be amazing. A right fit for this place.
I think so.
Think so? Why?
I think so. I think he's done a pretty good job with the city of Detroit, but I think maybe cronyism is a problem.
We're also asking you on our website, fox2detroit.com, the same question. Do you think Duggan would be a good head of the state, the governor, if he's elected? So if you want to weigh in, just scan that QR code right there at the bottom right of your screen. So far, most of you say yes, and it is even close as you look at the numbers here. But I want to keep in mind, those are not scientific poll numbers. That's just a look at what some of you are telling us right now. We'd love to hear from you. We'll talk more about that in a second. But right now, we want to talk about the incoming Trump administration. Just real quickly here, a lot is happening because there's a couple new people nominated for jobs in the president-elect's second term. First, cryptocurrency advocate Paul Atkins. The president-elect nominated him to serve for the head of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Now, Atkins is the CEO of a company and has served in the SEC before as a commissioner. In a statement, Trump called digital assets critical to America's real success, something he feels Atkins realizes. Now, the agency's been cracking down on problems in the world of crypto. And there's actually one more on the controversial side. Former White House advisor Peter Navarro is coming back to the administration as senior counselor for trade and manufacturing. You remember this face and that name? Now, why is this controversial? Well, Navarro served time in prison related to the January 6th insurrection. He was held in contempt of Congress for defying a White House subpoena as a House committee investigated the attack on the Capitol. But another of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks could have his nomination yanked from under his feet. Former Fox News host Pete Hegseth. You've heard a lot about him recently. He was on Capitol Hill again today, and he was meeting with Republican senators, trying to drum up support. The president-elect nominated him for defense secretary, but several on Capitol Hill are really concerned because of allegations of sexual assault, which, by the way, he does deny, as well as claims of him being drunk at work events and behaving inappropriately around female staffers. Hegseth says he will not back down. The president-elect is rumored to be considering replacing him with this man, someone you know very well also, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. DeSantis served in the Navy as a judge advocate general and was deployed to Iraq. He also ran against Trump, as you may remember, in the Republican primary before dropping out and endorsing him. Now, we're picking up our conversation about Mayor Duggan's run for governor. Next on The Pulse, an all-star panel discussing his chances, the city's future, and the future of our state. You're watching Detroit's only nightly political talk show. This is The Pulse. Thank you all. All right, my friends, joining us to talk more about Mayor Duggan running for governor, the future of the city and the state, an all-star panel. Detroit City Council member Mary Waters, Malachi Barrett with Bridge Detroit, and Sam Robinson with the Detroit 1 Million, which is a Substack program, a journalism project, talking about what Detroit will look like, again, with 1 million people in it. And we thank you all for joining us here today. We only have about 10 minutes. You know how quickly that goes by, so let's get to it. Duggan today basically saying, we'll start with you, Councilwoman, that he was 100% behind Kamala Harris, but working class voters no longer seem to believe the party represents them. Not a surprise to you.
Not a surprise at all. And let me just say that I am thrilled that Mayor Duggan has the guts and the leadership to come out and run as an independent. Because you see, things aren't the same anymore. And if you think about how Donald Trump actually got elected, he received votes from both Democrats and Republicans. He is a MAGA party. He's not necessarily the Republican Party. And so I commend Mayor Duggan for what he's doing. You see, people are tired of partisan politics, and I believe that that was truly demonstrated in this last election.
Two new panelists who have been joining the show for a little while now, who take us to the next generation and iteration of journalism on social media, Sam and Malachi. We thank you both, of course, for being with us as well. If Kamala Harris won this election, would Mayor Duggan run as a Democrat?
I think so, yes. I think he really heard from not just folks in the city, folks in the county and state, that Democrats had real challenges communicating and getting out their message. Their victories, their wins, and my question to Mike Duggan is, do you have independent policies? I think Duggan is one of the people that would champion a lot of what Joe Biden accomplished through his administration. So that's going to be interesting to square with sort of trying to back away from the Democratic Party.
Well, let's talk about how things work, because campaigns are often kind of run at first by on a lot of sentiment and a lot of buzz. But when it really comes to being a good governor, Malachi Barrett, as an independent, can he get the work done that he needs to get done with the state legislatures that's split?
I mean, this is exactly why he's running as an independent. He feels that the gridlock, the partisan divides in Lansing that have stalled a lot of really important legislation as we're in this lame duck session, kind of wondering what's going to get pushed forward, as well as things that he's brought to the legislature that have not advanced. He's gotten some wins. I mean, auto insurance reform was a big one, but his big land value tax proposal kind of fell flat. And that was, partly due to some kind of inter-party skirmishes. It was partly because the Republicans rejected it and didn't really want to give Democrats a win. It was also because people within the Democratic caucus itself were kind of battling on, do we get some more progressive legislation passed through? Joe Tate as the House Speaker. So I think for him, he sees this as kind of a political kind of pragmatic strategy to not come into office with this like built-in resentment from one party. I mean, he could end up getting resentment from both parties for doing this, as well as a way to kind of speak to some of the frustrations that Sam was talking about with the Democratic Party.
Let's talk a little bit about West Michigan and up north. Mary Waters, you have your hand on the pulse of Detroit and Southeast Michigan, squarely on the pulse. However, when you look at West Michigan and you look at up north, aren't there so many voters there, and correct me if I'm wrong, who think that Detroit has been a charity case for the legislature and for the state?
Well, of course, I'm a former state legislator, and of course that was always a challenge for us. But if you think about what Mayor Mike Duggan brings to the table, a wealth of knowledge. He was deputy at Wayne County, right? He's also been the CEO at DMC. I mean, he understands that, and he's done a great job in the city of Detroit. He understands the whole business side as well as the community side. He's done $1 billion in affordable housing. He worked with the business industry, but he's also going out to the community and develop in the neighborhoods as well. He gets it, and that's his strength, and that would be his strength statewide.
But does Joe Blow in Grand Rapids or in Portage or in Kalamazoo care that much about all the work that he's done to make Detroit successful?
Well, the thing about it, if you can make Detroit successful, you can make other areas successful, right? It is about his knowledge and his willingness to be able to work with people. And he does know how to work with people. He knows how to get things done.
Sam, some stiff competition, perhaps. Jocelyn Benson, again, these are people who have not thrown their name in the hat, but Jocelyn Benson, Garland Gilchrist, Senate Minority Leader Eric Nesbitt, maybe Tudor Dixon. Any of these names jump out to you in terms of being a real challenge?
Yeah, I think one person who you didn't mention that I think is looking at today's news with sort of excitement is Chris Swanson, who is the Genesee County Sheriff, and Democrats today, House Democrats on their Facebook page had a message about how they support police. Now you have a independent candidate and a Republican candidate that are going to try to hit Democrats on their perceived lack of support for police funding. Chris Swanson is going to be the perfect sort of kryptonite to that. And I think if you're up north, yeah, obviously Flint, sort of southeast Michigan, but I think as a white guy, a guy that's a county sheriff, and you saw during the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020 his relationship with that community. I think he might be a dark horse Democratic primary guy.
You know, I've worked with a lot of people myself across the state, and I've got to tell you, based on what I know about Mayor Mike Duggan, up close and personal, because I work with him a lot on city council, but I also work with him as a former state legislator. He will crisscross this state. He will win people over. He does know how to get things done. I know that. I can say that because I've worked with him personally. I've watched him deliver, and he's the type of person that you can approach. And in his word, when he gives you his word, he keeps it.
You know, 12,000 signatures for an independent to get on the ballot, which isn't going to be a challenge. He has 180 days to do it. Listening tours are important. He says he's going to do those as well. But Malachi, just in terms of being someone who's an independent without major party backing, will he get the dollars that he needs? And I know he knows a lot of people in the business world.
Yeah, I mean, we're all doing kind of a cost-benefit analysis on how this helps him and how it hurts him. He gets to avoid a potentially costly primary, but he also loses, you know, the Democratic Party's support, and that's important for fundraising. It's important for organizing. You get the entire, you know, get out the vote machine of the Democratic Party. Did that pay off well for Kamala Harris? Maybe not.
No.
Right? I was about to say.
Jump in, all three of you, when I ask this question in terms of looking forward in the crystal ball and looking at what happens here. Does he end up saying, after kind of putting his toe in the water and saying, wait a minute here, maybe I need to go ahead and become a Democratic candidate? Do you think he switches at any point?
I think it might matter on how many other Democrats we see in the legislature come out to support him. I mean, today I haven't really heard much from anyone else but State Representative Karen Whitsett. And she's got her own independent streak. She met with Trump to champion alternative COVID treatments, of course, and drew the ire of Democrats in the legislature. But she today came out to me and endorsed Mike Duggan. Said in the car when we were on the phone with her, he's the most genius politician she has ever met. And I think you're going to hear a lot of folks say that.
And I feel the same way as Karen Whitsett. You know, I support him. He supported me when other people turned their back on me when I ran for Congress. He stood by me. He stood with me every step of the way. I admire that in an individual. When they give you their word, they keep it. And that's the kind of guy that he is. I appreciate that.
He's clearly got a lot of friends in important places, which I think is going to serve him really well. Bill Ford came out this morning, was one of the first people. And I think that signals he won't have an issue really with fundraising. When I moved to Detroit, people were like, don't underestimate the political power of Mike Duggan. Something that I've come to learn being here, being from the west side of the state, where people are wondering if people are going to get to know him. But I think he'll have a strong organization.
One of the other people who came out after this announcement today was Jocelyn Benson on her X post, and she basically said, when he said, I'm an independent, she basically said, hey, I'm a proud Democrat. She clearly is in this to try to win it. Jocelyn Benson, pros and cons outside of Metro Detroit. Sam?
A lot of people don't know who she is. I think she suffered a little bit when we talk about this conversation, maybe not as Secretary of State in her role, sort of making wait times go down and certainly making it easier to vote for residents. But just who she is, I think, is something that you know, a lot of people want to get to know her. We heard a lot about Kamala Harris. We felt like, you know, it was very scripted. It was very clean and cut. Kamala likes to call it disciplined. Right. I think Jocelyn Benson would too. But a lot of people want to get to know her.
Okay, let's talk about one last person here because we only have a quick minute here, but an important person, the Lieutenant Governor, Garland Gilchrist. You know, and I've talked to several people on the phone today who say he just doesn't have the it factor, but then other people say he's brilliant and he is very smart. So what do you do with this name?
Yeah, I think he's a really great communicator, right? You've probably seen it. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I think he's got a lot of policy experience now, being Lieutenant Governor. He probably is going to run into the same name recognition problem.
Well, let me tell you, he's never been elected to anything. And that's the truth. Now, people know him throughout the state because he generally go in and represent Governor Whitmer. But he has never himself been elected. People have never voted for Garland Gilchrist throughout the state.
And someone who's run for office, you know how important it is to know how to run.
Yes.
It's almost as important as, of course, doing the job in some ways, right?
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
so take us a few months into this. What do we see open up? What are some surprises? Final words from all of our panel.
I think it's a big question of just what happens to the Democratic Party. The chair, who's been here for the last 3-4 election cycles, 2 federal cycles at least, is going to be departing. Lavora Barnes. There's going to be a new leader of the party. We're going to have a whole conversation among Democrats of who's going to replace Whitmer. I mean, we have names that haven't gotten in yet. It's going to be really interesting to see.
We only have about 30 seconds left.
Well, I think some independents will also excite some people on both sides of the aisle.
It'll be interesting to watch. Sam?
Yeah, I think that's the question of, will we see Republicans that we know step up? We did with Biden and Kamala Harris in Michigan. Will we see them come out for Mike Duggan, or will we see him take away votes from Democrats?
And by the way, I've subscribed to your Substack account. One day we'll do a show about the next iteration of all of this great information that's out there, because it's really good stuff. And I want to thank you for joining us. Sam, Councilwoman Malachi, great to see all three of you here on The Pulse. Up next, they allegedly came after the presidential campaigns, and now they're coming after us. We're talking about Chinese hackers. What do they want? And what do you have to look out for? We have a cyber risk expert who's with us next on The Pulse. We're back now on The Pulse talking about people, power, and politics, and now it's all about protecting people. Cyber risk expert David Darajotis with Flow Specialty is in the hot seat, and we thank you for being with us here tonight.
Thank you, Roop.
All right, so let's get to the headline here. Chinese hackers may have targeted the Trump-Vance campaign and the Harris campaign. There are allegations against them, but there was some real damage that was done. What happened to their campaigns?
100%. We're not talking about May. They absolutely did target. We're talking about very sophisticated attackers coming out of China. They're state-sponsored, meaning that they're either employed or they're supported by the Chinese government, getting their hands on very sensitive information that puts everybody at risk. We're talking about call logs. We're talking about metadata. Who did they reach out to? How long were these conversations for? Location information, text, and even some voice clips. We're talking about very sensitive data.
So when you say metadata, explain that to people who aren't familiar.
We're talking about data about data. So it's not necessarily all of the contents of the call, but it lets you know when was the call made, how long was the duration for. It's information about info.
So let's talk about why a Chinese hacker and the Chinese government would want this kind of information from the political camps.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're talking about keeping your friends close and your enemies closer. Not to say that we're true enemies with China, but there is certainly some tension there. Getting your hands on information that can be used to either discredit or to shame a candidate, to get a step ahead, to find out what are they looking to do. Are there going to be more tariffs? What's their political motives? What are they going to be looking to do with various countries or business leaders? This is all information that can help them tactically have an understanding about what's coming down the pipe.
And so we know a lot of these, as you say, were actual phone calls. Some of them were voicemails. And then there's the other metadata. But the text messages is a huge part of this. And now the feds are saying, and some experts like you were saying, hey, use encrypted text messaging.
Yeah.
Why is that so important?
Think about it. When you put sensitive information in a text, it's clear, meaning that anybody can see it. The phone companies, if they don't get rid of that information, if they get hacked, like we're talking about what's exactly happening now, that information can be up for grabs. Think about all the sensitive details that people share in text messages. When you encrypt something, the sender and the receiver are the only two parties that are able to read those messages. Not even the company that provides those services has access to it.
But so like on my iPhone, it's not encrypted, right?
It's not encrypted, Roop. So all that information, think of the most intimate or private or personal things that you're sharing with important people when you're doing investigative journalism, when you're reaching out, having conversations, all of that is up for grabs.
Now, let's talk about why a Chinese hacker, we understand why they would want someone from the Trump, Vance, Harris camp, you know, they want to get their information to compromise American government. But why would a random dude named Roop, who's sitting out in northern Oakland County, why would they want my stuff?
Yeah, that might be the question that millions of Americans ask about TikTok. Let's think about the whole ban that's coming down the line. January 19th, that's when TikTok is supposed to be banned and will no longer have access to it. It's all about information collection, as much data as you can get your hands on to understand the way people think, what are people's motives, what are they looking to do, what are their interests, what are their political or religious affiliations. All of that can be used to sway or to provide misinformation or to guide individuals. It's very powerful data.
So when you hear people say things like, I don't care if those hackers want to see, a mother-daughter do a TikTok dance or a recipe unfold on a TikTok video, it's not just about that dance, that food, that recipe. It's about something bigger than that.
Not at all. Think about how much money marketing companies make. It's billions of dollars. They're able to understand the minds of people. Again, what are their likes? What are their interests? What are their spending habits likely to be? So the governments want to certainly get their hands on this as well. Think about something as sensitive as location information. Just today, we found out that the CEO of United Health was assassinated in New York. Somebody knew exactly where he was going to be at that moment in time coming out of the hotel this morning.
Through hacking through the phone, right? Well, perhaps it's possible. That technology exists.
It exists, and it's possible. That's why they collect and they go after location information. It's so powerful, and so much can be done with it.
Yeah, if you're trying to take someone who's high profile and keep them in a covert place and kind of move them around, and yet you have access to someone's phone in that place, boom, you've got yourself a target. Let's talk about what people can do. So clearly iMessages are not encrypted. We know that. Your Android, not encrypted. What is encrypted?
You have to look at some very atypical messaging applications. Signal is one that a lot of people may not be familiar with. It is a very popular messaging app that can be used for voice calls, for video messages, for texting. It's end-to-end encrypted. There are others like WhatsApp. I know it's a little bit more controversial with that because we're talking about Facebook, we're talking about Meta. It's a related company. We know the privacy mishaps that they've had, but it is true end-to-end encrypted communications. MySudo is another. Some of these are paid, some of these are free, but there are a variety of options that people can use.
Well, a lot of people who have relatives across, waters will be contacting relatives in London or India or wherever through WhatsApp. And WhatsApp, I know there have been some compromises we've talked about, but basically that is one really easy way, because you already have Meta, just like download it and boom, you're in there.
Absolutely. And again, it's protecting all of your communications. Anything that you're texting from WhatsApp to WhatsApp, you have to stay in band. So if you're in WhatsApp or you're in text message or email, for example, if you're sending it to other people that are using different communication systems, that takes it out of it being truly encrypted.
True or false, now that the election is over, we don't have to worry as much?
No, false. We absolutely have to worry. People are always looking. They're always snooping, whether it's coming from within the United States, if it's foreign adversaries. Everybody wants information, collecting as much data as they can so that they can use it against you. Well,
you are definitely a wealth of information and useful information, not just from a political point of view, but also from a consumer point of view. I think many people are thankful that you were here today to help us with that. I want to thank you so much for your time. David Darajotis, good to see you.
Thanks, Roop.
That is the Pulse for tonight. And a reminder, Mayor Mike Duggan will be here tomorrow, right here at this desk, discussing his race for governor. So tune in for the Pulse after the Lions game here on Fox 2. I'm Roop Raj. Have a good night, everybody.